Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Very excited to be working with Mark Wickersham, who's been influential in my career in accounting. I'm now a key account manager with Ignition and looking forward to taking you through today's webinar around pricing. Obviously, an area of critical importance, like a 1% increase to prices, washes straight to the bottom line and impacts massively on the productivity of your accounting business. We're going to be running a poll shortly, but let's just kick off by using the attendee chat box just to let us know where you're dialing in from today. I'm sitting down here in sunny Devon in Plymouth. I'm actually on secondment from Brisbane at the moment. I'm heading back over to sunny Brisbane in a couple of weeks. But really looking forward to working with some UK accountants on this webinar. So yeah, just pop in the chat box there where you're from, and we can all have a little bit of a collaborate around that. Obviously, with pricing that we're talking about today, there's a compounding element to that as well. So, like, I'm a big advocate for reviewing your prices annually. And the benchmarking report that we're talking about today is going to show you a lot of firms are already doing that, and it'll give you an opportunity to see where you're sitting against the market as well, and making sure that the prices you're charging truly reflect your value. So we'll start off with some housekeeping. Today's session is being recorded, and a copy of this will be sent to you to share with your team if you so desire, alongside any resources that are going to be mentioned throughout the webinar. On the right of the screen, there's the live chat for you to put in where you're dialing in from, and the Q&A box. I have two of my colleagues who you probably know, Jack and Emily, if you're an existing customer, manning the Q&A for us today. And if you're just arriving to have a look at Ignition, just be aware I'm going to run a short demo right at the very end when Mark's finished his section, so you can see what we're all about. So a little bit about me. I'm a chartered accountant. I arrived in Australia in 2008, having been a partner in a four-partner firm in Plymouth in the UK. Spent about 10 years working in practice in Australia. That was a bit of a challenge with the different setup with trusts and what have you, but I was happy to join Ignition in 2019. So I've been with them for a little over 6 years now. So so I joined Ignition because it was my favorite app. I sat in Xerocon in 2018, and they asked us what we could best do to influence local business communities or the business community more generally. And I figured that with my skill set, the best thing I could do is teach accountants how to be more efficient, how to improve their cash flow, because that in turn is going to help them serve their local business community. So I joined Ignition. That's my journey. So today is going to be a quick step through Ignition to start with. Then I'm going to introduce Mark. And as I say, there's going to be a quick demo at the end where I'm going to run through Ignition. So customers, feel free to jump off. But prospects, people interested in using Ignition, stay on for that because you'll get a brief overview of what we're all about. So Ignition, broadly, as it says on the screen, from lead to cash. When I first joined Ignition, it was just about Ignition. It was about engagements, invoicing, payments, and workflow deployment. But we've broadened out from there quite a bit now. In the 6 years that I've been here, we're now completely a revenue operations platform, which will take your leads through to cash, transforming your sales, billing, and payments process. We've got about 8,000 service-based businesses working with us now. That's accounting firms, bookkeeping businesses, and professional services businesses of all sorts. So this is what Ignition looks like now. It's not just engagements, invoicing, payments, and workflow deployments anymore. Top right-hand corner there, you can see you've got the ability inside Ignition to capture and qualify leads using our deals functionality and manage your sales pipeline through that. You send proposals and contracts as you did before, collect your client information using a new feature called Forms, potentially. Obviously, the invoicing and automatic billing is still there, as is the payment collection piece. And we've since I joined in 2019, we've introduced the ability to bill for out-of-scope work using instant invoicing or instant bill, as existing customers will know it, and also introduced the ability to renew agreements. And part of the renewal process, it gives you an opportunity to increase prices as well. So if you renew your agreements annually, you will get the opportunity to increase your prices as part of that. So just talk a little bit about today's agenda. It's not really an agenda in the true sense of it, the way I normally run a webinar, in terms of like tick these off as we go through them. This is sort of the flow and the content that's going to be covered by Mark primarily. Highlights of the benchmarking report, a little bit of talk around pricing for compliance and tax planning and advisory, including the value pricing opportunities that exist there. which Mark is super good with, and the opportunities presented for pricing around making tax digital for ITSA. And then Mark's also going to cover the 3 steps to value pricing. Just want to confirm that this 25-26 benchmarking survey that we've released is going to come to your inbox after the webinar. We surveyed over 90 firms. Turnover range that was most common is in the 250,000 to 750,000 pound range. The business regions all over the country, but about 50% the business hubs, business hub of London and the southeast. So I just want to, there you go. So there's firms' annual average firms' annual revenue range there. So the most common firms were in the 250k to 700k range, and the 28% and 26% there being London and the southeast. So I just want to hand over to Mark now. A little bit about Mark before I hand over to him. I was a partner in a firm in Plymouth for about 8 years before I went to Australia, and we worked with Mark to completely revolutionise our approach to pricing. Mark not only helped with ideas, but also with implementation as well. And obviously, since I went to Australia, he's gone from strength to strength with his #1 Amazon best-selling book around effective pricing for accountants and his Accounting Web Award nominations. And obviously he's become a bit of an industry leader around pricing. So I'm looking forward to hearing his content. So across to you, Mark.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Peter. And thank you to Ignition for inviting me to speak at the webinar today. We have got so much to cover. It's a big topic, value pricing. Everyone's still talking about it and struggling with it. And one of the things I know is that many accounting firms in the UK find themselves working crazy long hours and struggling to make ends meet. And that's because the root cause is usually pricing. But we can fix that. We can fix that as we start to take a journey towards value pricing, which is what we will look at today. And as well as some benchmarking studies. But first, a bit more of my background. I have been in the profession since way back now in 1988. I qualified I entered the firm as a trainee, qualified as a chartered accountant at a large 8-partner firm in Sheffield, South Yorkshire. I've seen 2 people from South Yorkshire here. I then once I qualified, I spent the next few years specializing in tax. I went to the tax department. And that was up until 1996 when I started my own accounting firm as a sole practitioner. I had no clients. I just developed a love for marketing and started growing a firm. And for the next couple of years, if you'd have seen my firm, you might have thought I was running a successful accounting practice because I grew crazy fast. I went from a room in my bedroom, in my house, a bedroom in the house, to my first offices in 2 months. I had a bunch of people, outgrew after 15 months, moved into bigger premises. I was growing like crazy. I got to 200 clients inside 2 years. And so it might have seemed successful, but actually by the end of 1998, my life was a complete mess. I was struggling to make ends meet. I was working crazy long hours. It was mad. I was working longer hours than when I was an employee as a corporation tax manager and making less money. So something was wrong. And fortunately, I then met a few really interesting people that changed my life. In late 1998, I met Steve Pipe. I went along to his 3-day accountants masterclass. I know Peter knows Steve as well. He's now a good friend of mine, my mentor hero. And he helped me to understand how to better run an accounting firm. That then led me on a journey where I met Ron Baker in 1999. And Ron, when I first met him, explained this concept of value pricing, which was, for me, back in 1999, I'd never heard of it. I grew up in the profession thinking we had to keep timesheets, we had to log hours. And when he explained value pricing, everything then changed. And my first value pricing system that I applied in late 1999 started getting me prices that were almost 4 times as high. And I might talk more about that later on. Then a few years later, the practice then turned around. Once I figured out how to price better, I also got into business advisory and adding more value. The practice became profitable. I sold it to my client managers. And in the meantime, Steve Pipe asked me to start speaking at his events to other accountants. We went into business together. We ran AVN for about a decade. And then in 2010, 2014, 11 years ago, I founded the Value Pricing Academy. I've been teaching value pricing now through the Value Pricing Academy online, webinars, videos, and so on. And I've also written several books on value pricing. So that's what I do. I teach value pricing. So let's move on to, let's start with, we're going to talk a little bit about some of this amazing benchmarking report that you're going to get access to later. I'm going to pick up on some of the highlight numbers, look at some of the key messages, and then we'll start to talk about how can we apply value pricing, what are the 3 key steps we need to undertake with value pricing, and then we might look at some topical stuff like tax planning, like making tax digital, and other interesting things happening in the UK. So let me first of all, let's just start with just a few summary from the report that Ignition have produced, which is I'm just picking up some highlights. There are some amazing things in there. Read the full report. But in summary, yes, lots of firms are planning to increase their prices, and so they should be. I guess the things that stood out to me here is that the biggest reason that people are looking to increase their fees, their prices, is because of rising business costs. And that's great. But there's actually a bigger opportunity here. We should be increasing our prices because we can develop more value for our clients. We can increase the value. And with all the things changing in the UK right now with making tax digital and so on, there are lots of ways we can increase value. And as we do that, we should be increasing our prices as well. We should increase the prices to reflect the value of what we do. In fact, I would argue that yes, we should increase price for inflationary reasons, but we should be increasing by much more than that. And I noticed that most people are only looking to increase price by 5% to cover costs. We should be doing more. Why? Because every year we create more value. I mean, if you think about your skill set now, the value that you deliver to your clients, I'm guessing you are now more valuable today than when you first qualified as an accountant. I hope you are. We are getting, as we increase our experience and knowledge, we become more valuable, and we should therefore be increasing prices based on that value. So, that's just some of the highlights. I want to talk more specifically about compliance services, statutory accounts, CT600, some of the common stuff that we do. And there's some interesting statistics in the report that I think are worth bringing out. One of the things that I found fascinating here is that when it comes to limited company statutory accounts, CT600s, that 64% of people are delivering fixed fees. And I'm really pleased to hear that, because when I was running my accounting firm in the late 1990s, back then, pretty much every accounting firm did time-based billing. They did timesheets and they billed based on how long the job took. And one of the big problems with that is the customer doesn't know the price until the work's finished, until we've run off the work in progress reports, added up the hours, and then sent a bill. And every time you do that, it's always a surprise. Some commentators call it ambush billing or surprise billing. And it was never fair on the customer, because whenever we buy something as customers, we always want certainty. We want to know right up front what is the cost. So I'm really pleased that in the last decade, I've seen a huge shift in firms moving away from billing price, coming up with a price after the event based on the timesheet, to now giving a fixed price in advance. It's a fairer way of pricing. But one of the things that I think is really important to understand is I have heard over the last decade some commentators suggesting that fixed pricing is value pricing. It's not. They are two very, very different things. Let me just quickly explain the difference. So when we start to understand pricing better, there's really only 2 ways to price. There's 2 ways to price. We can either use cost plus pricing, which simply means that we add up the costs of producing a product or service, we add on our hoped for profit margin, and that's the price. And it's a crazy way to price for all sorts of reasons. The customer doesn't care about your costs, doesn't care about your hoped for profit margin. The only other way to price is value pricing. Value pricing is where we start with the customer. We start with what do they value, and based on that value, we come up with the price. With value pricing, costs are irrelevant. Costs should not matter with value pricing, as long as we make a profit. Now, of course, there are lots of different pricing models that you will have heard of that we can use. Time-based billing, fixed fees, sometimes called flat fees, contingent pricing, percentage pricing, dynamic pricing, demand-based pricing, menu pricing. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of different pricing models, ways to come up with price, but they all fit into one of those two. They're either cost plus or they're value pricing. And fixed fees, the way that most firms price is cost plus pricing, not value pricing. Here's the reason why. Let me explain. When I say to somebody, how much do you charge, let's say, for a tax return? If they say, well, I would charge £500, I would say, well, where's that 500 come from? And the answer is usually, based on all my experience of doing tax returns, I know that roughly it takes me 5 hours. I like to charge £100 an hour, so that's why I give a fixed price of 500. So in other words, fixed pricing is still cost plus pricing because it's rooted in price, in hours, in time, in costs. The only difference is that we're giving a price in advance to the customer based on our best guess, our estimate of the time. So I hope that makes sense. I am pleased that the profession is moving to fixed pricing because it's fairer on the customer. They get a price up front. And it also means we can get paid up front as well, which we should be. But it's still cost plus pricing. There is more that we can do. And if I move on to this chart here, this then looks at what are the different prices that firms charge in the survey. And I don't want to get too much into the detail, but the key thing I learned from this, and I've done many benchmarking studies over the years with accounting firms, and one of the things I find that whenever we look at how much firms charge for accounting services, the range of prices is extraordinary, from the lowest prices to the highest prices. Usually 4, 5, 6, 7-fold difference between the cheapest firm and the most expensive. And we can see that to some extent on this chart here as well. And that tells us some really interesting things. You see, when I say to somebody, your price is too low, you should put your price up, you're not charging enough for tax returns, often people say, but Mark, you don't understand my clients, you don't understand the marketplace here. This is the market price for tax returns. And I would say, no, it's not, because if there was a market price for accounting services, we would find a much more narrow range of prices that firms are charging. But that's not the case. Firms are all over the place when it comes to charging prices. And what that means, and what I take away as the opportunity here, is that some firms have figured out a way to charge much, much higher prices. And if some firms have found a way to charge higher prices, then you can too. You can learn and discover how firms are getting better prices. And as Peter rightly said, it is the most powerful way to change your price, your profits. You can change your price like that, and the next day your profits go up. It's really powerful. So a few just final thoughts on benchmarking, if I could kind of sum up my thoughts on benchmarking, is that firstly, firms are all over the place with pricing and the way they price. There are some using fixed pricing, some are just pricing based on time-based billing, some are using fixed value pricing, and so on. And the amounts are all over the place. What benchmarking does, and what this report does really well when you read it, is it exposes underpricing. It shows us how much the profession as a whole is underpricing, because some firms are charging much higher prices. It demonstrates there's a better way. But also we need to make sure that we move away from fixed pricing. Fixed pricing is not value pricing. We should be pricing based on value. So benchmarking is a great place to start. I recommend that you do read the report. I'll come back to some more statistics in the report later on. But let's get into, well, how do we do this? How do we do this value pricing? How do we get our prices higher? And I do hope that if there's one thing that you take away from today, is that you need to put your prices up. Every accounting firm I've ever met is too cheap. You need to put your prices up. And I think the reason why we don't is a mixture of things. Partly is because of a lack of confidence because we don't know how to talk about price. And that's not your fault. It's not my fault. We're not taught this as part of professional exams. It's one of these soft skills we have to learn ourselves. But when you learn how to value price, then confidence goes up. And the other reason that people don't put their prices up, I believe, is because of this worry that clients are price sensitive. Let's just deal with that, because this is really important. When I speak on the stage at events, I often ask people in the audience to put their hand up if they have price-sensitive clients. And what I find is when I ask that question is a forest of hands goes up. In fact, every hand in the room goes up. Yes, I have price-sensitive clients. This is the single biggest myth in pricing. You do not have price-sensitive clients. And you're probably thinking I'm completely crazy right now. But let me explain. A price-sensitive person is somebody who always buys the cheapest, and there are price-sensitive people in society. In fact, studies done by behavioral economists and by price psychologists estimate that roughly 30% of society are price-sensitive. But they are not your clients, because your clients are not representative of the population as a whole. Your clients are representative of that they are a subset. Your clients are business owners. They are entrepreneurs. They are high net worth individuals. And they are not price sensitive. They are value sensitive. It's a very different thing. Value sensitive. What we need to understand is that when people make a buying decision, when somebody buys something, subconsciously in their mind, there's this value equation that basically says we look at what's the benefit this thing's going to give us and what is the cost to acquire it. We can simplify that as the price. And as long as we perceive that the benefit this thing is going to give us is greater than the price, there's a profit on the deal and we are likely to buy. So if we take, for example, this iPhone that I bought last year I live in Portugal, by the way. This was 1,300 euros in Portugal. Why did I buy this? Because I love Apple products, I love photography and video, and it's got great cameras. And so to me, the value this gives me is greater than the 1,300. And I'm a value-based person. If I was price sensitive, I would never buy this because I could buy something for a tenth of the price. I could go to Motorola and buy something for probably $100, £100. But I'm willing to pay a much higher price to Apple because I perceive a profit. The benefit I get is greater. Most people are value sensitive. They want to make a profit on the deal. And the key thing here is that price is just one part of the equation. You do not have to be the cheapest. It's about the size of the gap. It's about making sure that we create more value, more benefits to the customers, and we communicate it than our price. It's possible to have higher prices than all of your competitors and still win market share. We see that with Apple. We see that with Starbucks and many, many more successful companies. So why is it that accounting firm owners think their clients are price sensitive? It's because at some point, and possibly many times, you've presented a price to a client or prospective client, and they've said those words we hate. That's a bit expensive. And when we hear that reaction, we assume they are price sensitive. And when we hear that several times, we start to extrapolate in our mind and assume most people are price sensitive. And so we try to keep our prices down so we don't get that's expensive reaction. However, we have to understand, why do people go, that's a bit expensive? And it's not because you're expensive, because you're not. You're too cheap. I know that from the benchmarking study. The reason people say that's expensive is because it's a knee-jerk reaction we all have as customers when we see a price and we do not understand the value. We do not understand the benefit. And that's a big problem because as a profession, we are not very good at communicating value. And that's why people say it's expensive. We therefore assume they're price sensitive and therefore we keep our prices low and we end up then struggling and having a lack of confidence around pricing. Your clients are not price sensitive. For example, do you have any clients that own an Apple product, whether it's an iPhone, whether it's a Mac computer, whether it's an iPad? Anybody that owns an Apple computer or iPhone, any Apple product cannot by definition be price sensitive because there are cheaper tablets, cheaper phones, cheaper computers. An Apple customer is not price sensitive. They are value sensitive. Think about your clients' coffee buying habits. How many of your clients would go and buy a cup of coffee in the morning at a Starbucks or Costa Coffee or what are the other chains? Nero's. Anybody that goes into those places for coffee is not price sensitive because there are cheaper ways of getting your coffee fix. Your clients are not price sensitive, they are value sensitive. So let's now look at these 3 steps to value pricing. Number 1, the first thing we have to do with all of your services, whether you do tax returns, bookkeeping, annual financial statements, with every single service, number 1 is very simple. Add more value. Stop and think, what could we possibly do to make our tax return service more valuable to the customer? What other problems can we solve? Because when you create more value, 3 things happen. Firstly, I think that as a professional, it's the right thing to do. As my friend Steve Pipe once said, profits are a consequence. Profits are a consequence of doing the right things. As firm owners, we should not be focused on profits. We should be focused on changing the lives of our clients, making as big a difference as we can. Because when we change our clients' lives, they will then willingly pay us more money. The profits will come as a consequence. So I think it's the right thing to do to focus on adding value to change people's lives. Number 2, when you have a premium service, a better service that adds more value, you differentiate yourselves from all the other competitors out there. I know that we all have a problem with the cheap competitors. Well, let's not compete on price. Let's be better. And number 3, when we can create more value, provided we are value pricing, we charge higher prices. And what's great about value pricing is it's a win-win situation with the client. When we do more to change their life, they win, and we win because they then happily pay us more money. Whereas time-based billing, here's the problem with time-based billing. We're not on the same side of the table as the client. We want different things. Our objectives are not aligned. Because if you're on time-based billing, how do you get higher prices? It's really, really simple. Really simple. Just work slower. Just work slower. Take your time. Put more time on the timesheet. Higher prices. But that's not in the right interest of the clients. Value pricing is, we both want the same thing. We want to create more value, and then we price based on value. So that's step number 1. You need to think about how can you create more value. Okay, second step. Second step is we want to make sure that we always give clients choice, give people options, because the thing about value pricing and the difficulty with value pricing and why as a professional we struggle is because value is subjective. As my friend Ron Baker says, value is in the hearts and minds of customers. Every customer values things differently. And so that creates a problem for us because let's say we're pricing a tax return service. How do we know how much a particular client values that tax return? We don't know. It's subjective. It's in their mind. Only the customer can determine value. And I think that's why the profession goes back to timesheets, because we feel it's objective. We can measure something that's accurate, which is crazy because it's not. Value pricing is difficult because it's subjective. But that doesn't mean we give up, because there are ways that we can find out how much somebody is willing to pay. And our goal here with pricing is to discover what is the buyer's reservation price. Now that's an economic term, so perhaps a simpler term and a better one is maximum willingness to pay. We want to understand what somebody's willing to pay, and we want to price as close to that as possible, because the extent to which we're under that is leaving money on the table. So how do we find out what is the maximum willingness to pay? Well, unfortunately, we can't ask. You can't say to a client, hey, Bob, this tax return service, how much are you willing to pay for that? What's the most you're willing to pay? Because I can guarantee Bob won't tell you the answer. Or if he does, he's going to lie. He's going to give you a low number. We can't ask. So we have to use techniques. And one of the techniques we can use is something I call menu pricing. It's the first thing I did in my firm back in 1999 when I discovered value pricing. And it simply means giving people a range of different options. Think of it as the bronze, silver, gold. And you should do this for every single service that you offer. Give people a range of different options. Create different packages, because we don't know what they're willing to pay. Let me go back to my story of 1999. I came from a tax background. One of the things I did a lot of was in corporations. If ever I met with a potential client that was a sole trader, that was a partnership making decent profits, I knew that they could save tax by incorporating. Now, the problem was in the first couple of years of my practice, I had no idea how to charge. In terms of time, it's an easy thing to do. I just go to a company formation agent, get a company set up, tell the tax man, set up perhaps a payroll scheme. Really simple in terms of hours. And so I used to charge between £200 and £250 for doing this service. And in the first couple of years of my accounting firm, if somebody said to me, hey, Mark, how much would it cost to move my business to a corporate structure? What would the cost? I would say between £200 and £250. And very often they said, that's expensive, because they didn't understand the value. Then I met Ron Baker in 1999, late 99, and this light bulb went on, and I realized I need to give people different choices. And these, what you can see on the screen, is actually from my very, very first pricing system back in late 1999. I created these 3 sheets of paper, and I created a 3-star, a 4-star, and a 5-star company incorporation service. Think of it as bronze, silver, gold. What I did was, I was charging 200 to 250. What I did was I made the cheapest one 350, more expensive, for doing less stuff. The middle one was my standard service, what I was doing for 200 to 250, but I made the middle one 750. And I made the top one 1250. For the top one, I brainstormed, what could I do to add more value? Well, I could do their company secretarial for the first year. I could perhaps do some company car tax planning. And so I created more value and had a premium version of incorporation. Now, here's the interesting thing. I then presented these 3 sheets of paper, and for the next 2 years, 2 interesting things happened. Number one, nobody ever said that's expensive ever again, even though the prices were much higher. And I'll come on to why when we look at step number 3. The other thing that was fascinating was that most people chose the middle option. They went for the one that was £750. And what was also interesting was that more people went for the 1250, the top one, than the cheapest one, which is also interesting. Now, I had no idea back in 99, 2000 why that happened, but a few years later, I got into price psychology and behavioral economics, started studying those things, and realized that there's a reason for that. And there's a reason why you should give 3 choices. I call it the magic of 3. You see, what happens is when, as a customer, we are faced with 3 choices, what happens is most people, not everybody, but most people gravitate towards the middle one. They will choose the middle. And the reason for that is because in behavioral economics, we know that we are loss averse. And what that means is that if, as a customer, we're faced with 3 options, and this happens in our subconscious. It's in the subconscious. We don't normally think about it out loud. It's there in the subconscious. Then we think, well, if we buy the cheapest one, there's a risk here that it's not going to quite deliver what we're looking for. If we buy the most expensive one, we might be paying more money than we need to. The middle one feels just right. And this is why this pricing methodology is often called the Goldilocks pricing. If you know the story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears, then the middle porridge is just about right. So what happens is most people choose the middle. It's typically 60% if you get it right. What's also interesting is I then start to wonder, well, why is it that more people chose the most expensive rather than the cheapest? And that's because there's a proportion of society who are what's called premium buyers. They want to buy the most expensive. I'm one of those. I will buy the most expensive phone I can get. I just want to get the best. And you will have those in your client base. Whether you know it or not, you have premium buyers, probably 20%. And so if you do not have a premium version, they can't pay you more money. You will have clients that will happily pay you more money for a premium version. And a premium version could be 50% more. If you don't have that, you're leaving money on the table.
Mark, can I just jump in with a question at this point?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, this is all great stuff. Obviously, Ignition has got the 3 options approach to be able to do this as well. The question one of our attendees has asked is, like, if you acquire a firm that's clients have been used to time-based billing for 30 years, how do you move them over to either fixed fee or value-based billing? Would you suggest using options as part of that transition? Or have you got any other ideas around?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would absolutely do that. But there's This is often something that people struggle with. How do I move people across? And it's actually easier. I think there's actually a different question here, because moving people from time-based billing to value pricing is actually something that people would welcome, particularly if what you were doing in the past is you weren't giving a fixed price up front. All customers want a price up front. They want certainty. They want to know exactly what the price is. So one of the benefits of fixed pricing is giving them that certainty up front. But also, another thing that people love, all of us as customers, we want choice. We want to feel in control of what we're buying. We like to have choices. And so even if you were doing fixed pricing before, but it was a fixed single price, it's £500 for this tax return, whether you like it or not. The minute you give people different choices, it gives them an element of control. They can then choose the package that's right for them. So customers love choice. So we should definitely do that as part of repricing our existing prices. What we also need to do, though, when we reprice our existing clients, we need to put our prices up, because probably the biggest problem that firms have when it comes to pricing is the existing client base. You see, when we learn about value pricing, most of us think, that makes sense. I'm going to start doing that going forward for new clients. And that's a good thing to do. But the trouble is, you only see a handful of new clients every month or every week. And so it's going to, because of all of the mess we've currently got in the existing client base, where we're charging too little, we're working crazy hard, just because we get the price right with one new client, it's not going to make a big difference. At some point, we have to tackle this issue of the existing client base. We have to go back and reprice them all. And that's where the big opportunity also lies. And so we have to have a technique for doing that. So offering choices is one. And then the other thing that we need to do as part of that process now fits into step three. Step three of this process. So let's just go back a step. We have to add more value. Then we want to give people choices. So as we think of ways to add more value, that gives us stuff that we can put into our premium packages. But there's a third step that's even more important. And this is, I would argue, the most important thing in value pricing. Many people think value pricing is about the number, the price that we calculate. No, the most important thing about value pricing is how do we communicate value? This is the communication skill. It is so important. And if we go back to what I said earlier, if you've ever given a price and somebody says that's expensive, it's because they don't understand the value. As we get better at communicating value, I've had people who I've worked with who have told me they've got 2, 3, 4 times the price for doing exactly the same thing as before. They've just communicated different. And that was the reason why, going back to my first pricing system, if I go back to here, for the next 2 years, nobody said to me, that's expensive. And the reason for that is when they said, so Mark, what's the price of incorporations? I would then pull out these sheets of paper, and before I answered the price, I would go and explain the benefits. I would communicate the value. It's the words on these sheets of paper that were so powerful. So what we have to do is figure out, how do we communicate value? And one of the things we should never, ever, ever do is answer the price question with the price. If someone says, what's the price? Do not give them the price. You don't give them the price until you finish building up the value. If they ask the price question, talk about the value first and then the price. We want to make sure that they see it in context of all the great things that you are going to do. And that means we have to learn the soft skills. We have to learn the techniques of how we communicate value. And those skills come from learning marketing, from behavioral economics, from the laws of influence. There are many techniques that we can use. For example, marketers teach us about turning features into benefits. People don't buy features, they buy benefits. And so we need to make sure that we communicate those properly. For example, if you are doing bookkeeping, if you to say to one of your clients, hey, we can do your bookkeeping, and as part of that, every month we'll reconcile your bank account. I can guarantee that you've never ever had this reaction. You've said to a client, we can reconcile your bank account. And they've gone, wow, that's amazing. I've always wanted an accountant who can reconcile my bank account. That's extraordinary. Thank you so much. When can we get started? That's happened never. because nobody values you reconciling a bank account. Does that mean there's no value in that? Of course there is. There's lots of value. It's a critical process. But our clients don't understand it because that's a feature. We have to find a form of words that turns that into the benefit. What is the benefit to the customer of that process? We have to talk in terms of benefits. And when we do that, everything starts to change. Then you can charge higher prices and they're not going to say those words we hate. That's expensive. Now, I know we're running out of time. I've got some more things I want to talk about with the benchmarking report, and Peter might have some questions. But before we do that, I've got some free resources for you. I wish we had more time. There's so much stuff that we could talk about. So just let me tell you about a couple of three free things that I've got for you. Firstly, if you want to be on my VIP list, then every Monday we send out an email at 4:00 in the afternoon, which has a list of any events that are coming up when I'm teaching about value pricing. We also have in there a question of the week, where it's usually a pricing question where I answer the biggest questions that people have with pricing. So I'm going to put a link into the chat for that if you want to get on the list and receive my pricing insights. What I also have, and I think I've done that correct, what I also have is, and this is brand new, you will be the first here, we've just set up a community. It's on a platform called School, which is really powerful. It's a community called the Value Pricing Academy, where we are letting people join for free, and you could be the first person to join. It's going live today, and if I'm going to put the link in here, you can apply, we'll let you in. And what we're doing in here is, in the classroom tab, we're going to have some resources that you can access around value pricing. We're going to be adding more stuff over the next few weeks and months. This has just gone live today. But also, most important, in the community, you can share with others and ask questions. In fact, I've just posted here a warm welcome to everyone joining us from the Ignition webinar. And so if you have questions afterwards that you want to ask, pose the question later on today or tomorrow. I will answer your pricing questions. So if you want to be part of that, again, I'm going to put the link in here. And then third and final thing to tell you about is, we're talking about value pricing right now, but for the last couple of years, I've been very much into AI, and I often get asked to teach AI for accounting firms and how we can use things like ChatGPT better. And back in March, I founded the AI Academy. It's a community of now over 500 accounting professionals, where I teach in the classroom how to use AI to save hours of time. I teach things like the importance of privacy and security, because most firms, unfortunately, unwittingly, are breaching data protection laws, GDPR. They are breaching client confidentiality. So I teach that in there, and many, many other courses to help you master AI and save time. And the reason I mention this right now is because in my course called Use Cases, where I teach practical things that you can use, like financial data analysis, I do have a series of videos on how to build your value pricing system. So this three-step process I've talked about today, I teach in that how you can use specific prompts and how you can use ChatGPT to build out your packages for all of your services. Now, this is something that there is a subscription for this, but what I thought I'd do as a special thank you to you for coming along is I just switched on in the background a 7-day free trial. So you can get access for 7 days, and you can watch the course on building your value pricing systems. You can watch the course on privacy and security if you want, whichever you prefer. You've got 7 days unlimited access, and I will put the link into the chat. But I must say, we don't normally give 7 days access, so that is going to be turned off at 2:00. So make sure after the Ignition webinar, make sure you click on that third link before 2:00 today, because I'll then turn off the free trial. Okay, they're my three gifts for you. Right.
So, question before we move on to the application of value pricing potentially to tax and advisory, Mark. Question about value pricing, and when we're sending out proposals, about whether we should be including a price on a proposal if we haven't articulated the value yet. So my view on this is Ignition's got a deals pipeline now where you're in the pre-sales, the pre-scoping. period before you issue the proposal, and ideally you'd identify the value with the client at that point, so you were pretty clear on the value that the client's going to get before you send the proposal, so you can put a price on it. But I think my second preference, if you can't do that, would be to send possibly a minimum price or a range as the price type when you send the proposal. Have you got any views on that around deals, around the value pricing and the timing around the proposal?
Yeah, I think that a proposal, a well-written proposal, is really critically important. But the proposal should come after we've had an agreement. The proposal should be there to clarify in writing what we've already agreed. We need to have a value pricing conversation. We need to talk to people. We need to talk to them about what we do, because it's only through the conversation that we have that we can properly build up the value and explain what we do. And then if we get objections, then we can handle them in the meeting. I think about the mistakes I made back in, let's say, 1997, 98 in my accounting firm. I'd go and meet a potential client and they'd say to me, "Hey, Mark, this is great what you're saying. All this tax stuff is great." They'd say, "So what's it going to cost?" And I'd panic a little bit because I have no idea. So I'd say, "Good question. I will go back and think about it, and I'll put a proposal through the post." And a few years later, I'd write this nice proposal. I'd send it to the post. And I'd keep my fingers crossed waiting for the phone call that says, "Hey, Mark, this is a great proposal. When can we start?" It never happened. And I, being an introvert, hated the follow-up phone call. And what I learned afterwards is that, unfortunately, what happens is if you send a proposal through the post and it's the first time they've seen it, you've not had a conversation with them, then what happens, and we all do this, if we receive a proposal, let's say a quote for landscape gardening, it doesn't matter how long and impressive it is, everybody goes through it as quick as they can to find the price. Everybody wants to see the price. And when they see the price in their head, they'll go, "That's expensive," because they've not read the rest of it. So the proposal is really important, and the way you craft it is really important, but you must have a conversation before that to build up the value.
Thanks.
Okay, so we've got, how long we've got? I've only got 2 or 3 minutes. So let me just give a couple more thoughts on the benchmarking study, which is awesome. So do read this. There was an interesting section on tax planning and advisory services. And I just want to give you my take on this. What I found with tax planning and advisory that staggered me here was that the most common way of pricing is hourly rates. And I mean, it's great to hear that we've got more people using value-based pricing, but this is where there's a huge opportunity. And this is what I found when I discovered value pricing, is the biggest opportunity with value pricing is to apply it to tax planning and advisory services. Why? Because with both business advisory and with tax planning, we can change people's lives. We can create so much value. And here's the big takeaway, is that we absolutely should not play price based on time. Let me just give you a quick scenario. You've got a piece of tax planning that's perhaps a new piece of legislation's come out, perhaps after the budget that's coming up soon, there's a new opportunity. And you can implement this opportunity for a client in 2 hours. And you have 2 clients. You've got Bob and you've got George. Bob is a small little business, and if you do the tax planning, it's going to save him 10 grand. George has a bigger business, and you do the tax planning, it's going to save them 100 grand. But both Bob and George, it still just takes 2 hours because you've systemized the process of filling in the claims, sending them off. How do you price Bob and George? Should they be charged the same price because the work took 2 hours? No. If you can save George 100 grand and Bob 10 grand, you're creating much more value for George and you can charge a higher price. The same with business advisory. So going back to this slide here, there's more stuff in the report, read it, but please, for advisory and tax planning, value pricing is a huge opportunity. And I think my last thing, before, unless you've got any questions, Peter, I think you wanted me to say something about the new stuff coming.
Just go on to MTD now, that's fine.
Yeah, so just a quick point on that. Obviously, read the report because there's more in there, but I thought it was interesting that actually, quite a few people haven't started thinking about this yet, but my thoughts on this is that there is a huge opportunity for you to revisit the way that you price. And you absolutely should be pricing monthly, not annually, for all services, partly because it helps with cash flow, it helps with the valuation of a firm. If you've got recurring revenue, we should be charging monthly. But also, because there's a lot of changes taking place with Making Tax Digital, that opens up opportunities to create some premium services around helping people get set up for this.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
Peter.
a quick question on that one, Mark. I think there's a lot of opportunity around Making Tax Digital as we're delivering value more frequently to clients. Potentially, we were just billing on completion before. So the question I've got is, if we're going to start monthly billing, say from April 26 next year, so collect 12 monthly payments up to March 27, would you bundle in the March 26 accounts into that and effectively extend a bit of credit for those accounts, or would you bundle in March 27 and have some sort of catch-up element which is going to improve your cash flow? Which would you go for?
Yeah, that's a great question, and so a question I've had before, that if you're switching from you're charging people, let's say the old-fashioned model is to charge and get paid for the annual financial statements once they've been done. And the new model is, let's turn it into recurring revenue. But let's be really clear on this. When I say paying monthly, that's not paying in monthly in arrears, that's paying in advance. So if their year end is, let's say, I think you said April 2026, and normally that work would be done, let's say you've done that by June 2026. If you're going to complete that in June 26, you want to be 100% paid by then, because as a profession, we're a service industry. We should not do debtors. We should not have debtors on the balance sheet. We should be paid in advance before we finish the work. So the question is, well, how do we do that transition? And there's a number of ways that you could do it, but one of the ways that you could do it, and it's about the words and the script, it's how you explain it, but you might say something like, the way that we now deal with now we've got Making Tax Digital is you pay every single month, and you'll pay, and what you'll be doing is paying for next year's, because we have to do it ongoing. But to help you transition your cash flow for that, what we'll do is we'll let you pay for this year's accounts over 3 months interest-free credit, let's say. The wording, the period and the wording you can decide. But it sounds like you're giving them a big bonus, a big thing. You're giving them some interest-free credit, when in reality you're getting next year's fee much, much quicker. And then from that point onwards, you're always going to be paid in advance, which is going to make a big difference for you.
Because the services you're going to be delivering under MTD support the preparation of next year's accounts, so that's logical as well. So before you go, I know you've got to rush off to another appointment. That's an absolutely blinding question come through here. I'm a chartered accountant, you're a chartered accountant, we're both driven by ethics. But it says, in our terms of engagement, which are based on ICAEW templates, we have to state that our fees are based on time. How does value pricing work with that? Now my view on this is, that's just guidance. You're running a business. You can price whichever way you want, provided it's ethical. That's my view. What's yours?
Yeah, well, I'd be interested to see that, because as I mentioned Steve Pipe earlier, Steve Pipe, many years ago, he actually contacted the ICAW to ask that exact question to get clarity, and they said, no, you can price in any way that you want, as long as you've agreed it in advance with the client. And that's what he was told in that conversation. And that's, to me, would be, I think you're right, it's guidance. It'll be interesting to see exactly what their wording is, but yes, you can price any way you like, as long as you have agreed it with the client. If the client's happy.
That's great. It answers the other question there as well about transparency. So that's terrific. Thanks very much, Mark. That's all been massively valuable to our audience, I'm sure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so Manuela, we're going to push my slides back now, I think, into the stream. Perfect. Thank you very much. So just a reminder that the recording of today's webinar will be in your inboxes shortly, together with the pricing benchmark report, and a reminder about some of the other resources that that Mark mentioned there as well. So that's coming. I wanted to mention this webinar we're running on Wednesday, the 3rd of December, Managing Engagement Compliance. If you've got a practice assurance review coming, or you think you might be due one in the next year or two, this one's well worth attending. My colleague Otis will be presenting how to use Ignition to help manage engagement compliance from the professional body perspective, and how you work with Ignition to keep everything up to date. Also want to mention a fixed fee playbook, which is coming out shortly. We've had this in the Australian market for a couple of years. It's actually a step-by-step process around how to move from time-based billing across to a fixed fee environment. It touches on value pricing as well, but it's about 30 pages long. It's chock full of content. It was written by our head of accounting in Australia called Beck Mahalik, who's director of Business Depot in Sydney. Massively impactful. I updated it for the UK market myself. We're just currently getting it proofread by some senior chartered accountants in the UK, and it'll be available for release shortly. But I highly recommend you getting hold of a copy of that, just so you've got it on your desk if you want to navigate from time-based billing to fixed fees. It also covers the regulatory environment around engagement letters as well. A bit dry, that section. The pricing stuff's really quite insightful. Okay, so let's have a quick look at Ignition for those of you who aren't already customers, just so I can show you in practical terms what Ignition looks like and how it talks to some of the things that Mark mentioned. So what you're looking at on screen here is our proposal builder. So basically, I'm not going to get into too much depth because I've only got a few minutes left. You basically position your services inside the proposal builder. You can have project labels describing whether things are compliance or advisory services. You can position services as compulsory based on the conversations you've had with clients, or you can position them as optional add-ons here. What does that look like for the end client? You can run a preview of that proposal. So what would happen then? The client would click into your email, click into the proposal. They get your logo, a quick introductory message, a brochure maybe where you can position additional services. We provide this brochure for free to our clients. So we base that on your website and make it look and feel however you want it to feel. And then they would get into the services that you've agreed to deliver for them. And those two add-ons I showed you on the proposal, they get positioned here. So a really good way to make sure your clients are buying from you everything you think they should be. Like, I hate the word upselling because we're accountants, right? So it's not upselling, it's positioning services in a way you think clients might buy and help themselves to be successful. Now, the three options that Mark just spoke about, if I go over here to a different proposal I've built, we've got a basic level, we've got a what you think you need level, and we've got a gold level as well. So what do options proposals look like to clients? You can put add-ons in here as well. So you can have the brochure, the add-ons, and the options, all to help you grow your business and service your clients' needs better, because it's easier to grow an accounting practice by selling more to your existing clients than it is by winning new clients. So what does an options proposal look like? I've clicked through to this one already. Similar sort of scenario. Get your logo, the introductory page, the brochure, and then you present the options to the client. You can say which one's recommended. Mark said most people gravitate to the middle one, but obviously you can make a recommended option as well and steer your client to that. So if they start having a look at that, similar flow to before, they get the projects and the services that you're providing, an idea around the pricing, how it's all going to be paid for, and then they get to see the engagement letter, which pulls together the services, your general terms, and any service-related terms which are there as well. If you need to print out a hard copy for clients to sign, you can click on this View PDF, and it opens the whole thing as an engagement contract, which you can print off and have signed manually if you want to do that. Spoke a little bit about deals. I'm rushing through, so I've got a minute left before the top of the hour. Our deals pipeline, it's not meant to replace something like HubDoc or Pipedrive if you've got that, or a sales management tool. It's really quite a light on sales pipeline. It's included in our Pro Plus plan. It comes as an add-on at £39 a month. So think of it as a business cost of about, say, $500 a year for having a sales pipeline that you can manage. So you can add cards, which you can drag and drop Kanban style as you move clients through your sales pipeline here. You can rename your deals, deal stages, anything you like. Doesn't have to be new lead, pre-qualifying, qualifying. You can move your cards through the pipeline as you want. You can name anything you want. You can have filters for owners, so team members can be responsible for their own deals. You can run filters. You could get an idea of the value of the deal up here by assigning the likelihood of each prospect becoming a client in the stage settings here. So a nice piece of kit. As an accountant, I think that's really good value for £39 a month. A nice bit of kit. So quickly over to proposals. These are existing proposals. I want to show you how to quickly raise prices in Ignition. I've filtered my proposals list for proposals that haven't yet been renewed but have been accepted. I'm going to select 3 of these, and I'm going to renew them to increase the prices. So if I just go to renew, it's going to give me 2 chances to increase the price. One, a general price increase, and then a client-specific price increase. So I click Let's Go. We can decide to increase all prices by whatever price percentage we want here. So let's go for 6%, and we can round prices up if we want to. It's all in dollars because I'm going back to Australia in a couple of weeks. So apologies for that. My demo account's set up for dollars. So we're going to round it up to the nearest 5. So then you can see the clients, the old pricing and the new pricing, and then you can decide client by client, like this one really should be a fair bit more because there's a lot of value in that. This client was pretty easy to deal with. I can go a bit cheaper on that one. And then you create the draft proposals in Ignition. And then you've got a third opportunity actually to fine tune the prices and the service description again before you finally send it to the client. So that's a good way of managing price increases. The other ways we've got, if you've already got an active service with a client, you've already engaged the client, you can come to the services that have already been deployed from an accepted proposal. This one here is set up to bill at $400 a month, $440, including 10% GST in Australia. To change that, you could just click into the service. You would edit the service, and let's just say the scope's increased a little bit, and you'll need to increase it to 450. You would do that there. You can email the client a notification that you're doing so as well. And then you just go next and then save that. And you get a little audit trail around the service change that you've made. In here, in the service, in the activity tab, little audit trail, but it does update all of your future billing items to the new price. So nice and easy to change prices for scope creep in Ignition. In terms of notifying the clients around this, what I used to do in practice was have a little clause in my general terms allowing me to do that. So if I go back to this step here and have a look at the engagement letter, sorry, just here, and look at my unanticipated services. This is a clause I used to use when I was in practice in Australia. So there it is, provided without prejudice. We reserve the right to invoice additional amounts where we're asked to do work which is minor and out of the scope of this agreement. And we also reserve the right to make minor edits to existing service prices should the need arise. So that might also cover you for an annual inflationary adjustment as well. I guess the last thing I want to look at is if you've got a service for something like a zero subscription, which is the same for everybody, regardless of whether they're a big firm or a small one. You can change the price of those services in bulk across all of your clients by going to the service library and go into your active service list here. Click on adjust pricing, and you can change the price for all of the clients that have that zero subscription. So say zero, QuickBooks pop the subscription price up. You change that price for every client, and that updates it across the board. So yeah, just wanted to show you that. For now, all I need to do is thank you for attending the webinar and staying on for the extra 3 minutes. Final poll up there from Manuela. I thanked Mark earlier on. I just want to thank you for attending.